Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you as always for stopping by. I hope the week's gone well. It's getting rather warm here now. There we go, the Draghi effect. This is a tweet from J.S. Blockland, and he sent the euro into a tailspin from about 118.50 down to 117.84 last. I don't think it's going to last long. I think European growth is a serious tailwind, notwithstanding low inflation. I think people will continue to buy up the euro from here. We are in this range, however, 114.50, which is the downside, up to 120.60. I think we head over 120.60 in early January, and my thinking is that we're going to see further dollar weakness on the perception that Powell will not be raising rates aggressively, and will be prepared to let the economy run hot. Home thoughts: ISS crew members Astro Paolo, Astro Comrade, Sergei ISS have landed safely in Kazakhstan, another successful space mission. And that made me think of Rumi: we come spinning out of nothingness, scattering stars like dust. And in fact, in a way, that's what they were doing. And then even more interestingly, I learnt this year that nearly half of the atoms that make up our bodies may have formed beyond the Milky Way and traveled to the solar system on intergalactic winds driven by giant exploding stars. Get your head around that. Science is very useful for finding our place in the universe, said Daniel Angles Alcazar, an astronomer at Northwestern University. In some sense, we are extragalactic visitors or immigrants in what we think of as our galaxy. I have been traveling vicariously, of course, from the source of the Amazon to the sea, the gentleman called John Ridgway. I must say the Muthaiga Library is full of these books which transport me away, and I do enjoy reading them. I've sort of concentrated on Africa. Now I've moved out further afield. This is a tweet from Serena Hotels about Lake Elementeita. The views are all picture perfect, every which way you look. Indeed, that's true, and it's a fantastic place. Little advertised by them, actually. This is a photograph of my wife and my youngest daughter riding along the shore at Lake Elementeita. Here's a photograph of flamingos returning to Lake Elementeita. Make for a mesmerizing spectacle, especially from above, watching their flight patterns on the water's surface. Lake Elementeita is derived from the Maasai word Mteita, meaning dust place. A reference to the dry and dusty quality of the area, especially between January and March. The town of Gilgil is located near the lake. In the south to north sequence of Rift Valley lakes, Elementeita is located between Lake Naivasha and Lake Nakuru. The major Nakuru-Nairobi highway runs along the nearby escarpment, affording motorists a spectacular vista towards the lake. At the southern end of the lake lie the Kikopi hot springs, in which the tilapia grahami breed, very popular for bathing. The local Maasai can claim it can cure AIDS. The reed beds nearby are fishing grounds for night herons and pelicans. It's really very beautiful indeed, well worth a visit. Political reflections: if there was anything to beat in mediocrity, the childish and delinquent declaration by Donald Trump that Jerusalem is Israel's capital, it was the pathetic response from the Muslim states. That's Robert Fisk. Youthquake, named 2017 Word of the Year by Oxford Dictionaries, defined as a significant cultural, political, or social change arising from the actions or influence of young people, has been selected by Oxford Dictionaries as the 2017 Word of the Year. The term saw a 401% increase in usage year on year as 2017 saw the often maligned millennial generation drive political change in reaction. Brexit was a grandparent thing, and then you saw the youth react to that, and Corbyn coming very close to getting to Downing Street. Lexicographer Susie Dent said the 2017 shortlist show that there's not a lot of sunshine in the standout words this year. Words like Antifa and compromat speak to fractured times of mistrust and frustration. In Youthquake, we finally found some hope in the power to change things and had a little bit of linguistic fun along the way. It feels like the right note on which to end a difficult and divisive year. I wrote about this in July 2017. I was saying that a lot here in Kenya would depend on the youth vote. And then I was citing the example of the United Kingdom. The youth vote slept in during Brexit, then woke up for the UK snap election and nearly carried Jeremy Corbyn into 10 Downing Street. Javed Zarif tweeted this: when I was based at the UN, I saw this show and what it begat, and he's reacting to Nikki Haley. The Riyadh 2 communique is blackmail of the Geneva process. This is Jafari, who's the Syrian representative to the UN. Those who drew up the Riyadh 2 statement were the ones who sabotaged this round. I mean by that the other side. I mean the Saudis and the Saudi handlers themselves, who are the Western countries. They do not want the Geneva process to succeed. Nobody can exert pressure on us. We have allies, we have friends, we have people on the ground fighting with us. Therefore, what the special envoy may mistakenly say does not reflect our relationship with our allies. Jafari ruled out while the opposition stuck to its Riyadh statement and dismissed a question about what he might say if he were to meet the opposition face to face at a possible Syria meeting in Sochi early in 2018, which Russia's trying to organize. We are politicians, we don't work in science fiction, he said. Look, as I said, and the hug is the biggest symbol of that. This is a fait accompli now. Riyadh has zero leverage. Bashar is an erudite, as Hervé said. Médecins Sans Frontières say that more than 6,700 Rohingya were killed in Myanmar. Well, at least it's being called out for what it is now, which is a genocide. It's as if life has stopped in its tracks, Mr. Stillhart said after his 3-day visit to the area. Homes destroyed by fire observed along the road gave a clue to the scale of the destruction, he said. And then there is the pervasive sense of absence, he added. About 300 Rohingya Muslims a day still cross the border from Rakhine State to Bangladesh, international relief agencies report. It's terrible and it's shocking. China builds up troop numbers close to the Indian border flashpoint as soldiers prepare for first winter near Doklam. The site of a protracted standoff early this year, Indian media has reported. Analysts suggested the development would allow China to tighten its control of its borders and prepare for any future problems in the region. End of August, I was writing about China, and I said China is also in Narendra Modi's face in the Doklam Plateau. And I said it's as if Xi Jinping is goading Narendra Modi, who would be seriously ill-advised to take on the Chinamen in that remote plateau, or anywhere else for that matter at this moment. And the problem is, Xi Jinping has Narendra Modi surrounded from the plateau to Gwadar in Pakistan to the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. If he's not feeling paranoid, then he's asleep. Another milestone along the path of Belt and Road, Sri Lanka officially hands over southern port of Hambantota to China on a 99-year lease, making my point. And in that article I was saying Sri Lanka, which gorged on Chinese debt, has had to disgorge the Hambantota port to its creditor. Mr. Frank-Walter Steinmeier arrived in Banjul yesterday for his first visit to the Gambia. Doug Jones, of course, won the Alabama Senate. That was indeed a famous victory. The Secretary of State Tillerson says Russian interference in US elections is an act of hybrid war. At least he's calling it for what it was, taking it back to something I wrote in 2012 when I was quoting the US Army Journal of 1997, which said one of the defining bifurcations of the future will be the conflict between information masters and information victims. This information warfare will not be couched in the rationale of geopolitics, but will be spawned, like any Hollywood drama, out of raw emotions, hatred, jealousy, and greed. Emotions rather than strategy will set the terms of information warfare struggles. December 2016, I was writing about Putin's intervention in the US election, and I was quoting Don DeLino, "We have a deviate tomahawk." British military chief warns that Russia could cut off the internet to NATO countries. They really are ahead of the curve when it comes to hybrid warfare. Putin praised Trump at his annual press conference. Look at the markets, how they've risen, he said. For those looking for a change in career, there's a shortage of male strippers in New Zealand. According to service providers, strip of meat demand is up 33%. Interesting. International markets, Netflix's rising popularity provoked Walt Disney's Bob Iger to seize $52 billion of TV and film assets from its rival 21st Century Fox. Disney agreed Thursday morning to pay Fox shareholders $0.2745 Disney shares for each Fox share. In return, it will gain the 20th Century Fox and Fox Searchlight Film Studios, Fox's television production, FX, and National Geographic Network, and Fox's regional sports networks, along with valuable stakes in international assets such as pay TV provider Sky and a bump to majority ownership of Hulu. This is all subject to regulatory approval, of course. But it's an interesting response, I must say. Let's move on to the currency markets. Euro, dollar, of course, Draghi's took that down, last trading at 117.85. Dollar index back above 93.50, 93.59. Japanese yen, 112.21. That's been strengthening as well. Swiss franc, 0.9885. The pound, 134.41. The Australian dollar, about which I'm quite bullish, 0.7678. India rupee, 64.1515. South Korean won, 1088.01. That's had a good rally on perceived relaxation of tensions on that peninsula. Brazilian real, 334.18. Egyptian pound, 17.8655. South African rand, around the 1350 level. That's going to get a big rally if Ramaphosa muscles his way in. Dollar index, let me put up a one-year chart. It's been a poor year for the dollar, and that's why, notwithstanding the rate increases we've seen, we've had looser conditions in the US through the year. Euro dollar, it's been a good year for the euro, last at 117.85. As I said, currently 114.50, 120.60 range, look at that, and I think we're going to head higher into next year, in part because I think the Powell will put the brakes on, and I think European growth will surprise to the top side. Bitcoin's wild ride, indeed it has been a wild ride. We're now at 17,155. But I tend to agree with Taleb. There is just no way we know where it will go. It could go to 100,000 or it could go to 1. Gold, a little bit of a firmer feel about it, 1255, trying to find a base maybe in line with my weaker dollar theory, I suppose. WTI crude oil, this chart is from Triple Leverage, last trading at $57.20. Lots of folks looking for the downside. I am not. I think we buy it on reverses. Sub-Saharan Africa, the region's median government debt level will probably exceed 50% of GDP this year from 34% in 2013. Cost of servicing the liabilities will average almost 10% compared with half that 4 years ago, the IMF said. There are no investment-grade dollar debt issuers in Sub-Saharan Africa after Moody's and Fitch cut Namibia to junk this year. Namibia, interestingly, 2 consecutive quarters of contraction. Growth is expected to average 2.6% this year, almost double 2016's level, but barely above population expansion, with delays in making policy changes risking this, the IMF said. Rising debt levels present a major risk to progress in sub-Saharan Africa, especially if there's another major shock in the global commodity market, and if African markets are still in a recovery stage in the economic cycle. The number of sub-Saharan African countries in or at risk of debt distress almost doubled to 12 over the past 4 years. We don't envisage a debt crisis, but it's clearly a risk for a handful of countries. So this is a problem, and we're going to have to see some tapering off in the debt appetites. Zimbabwe's Mnangagwa calls for an end to Western sanctions. He's just got 1.5 billion from Afrexim Bank. We call for the unconditional lifting of the political and economic sanctions which have crippled our national development. We realize that isolation is not splendid or viable, as there is more to gain through solidarity and mutually beneficial partnerships. The international community will be closely watching the next elections in 2018, which Mnangagwa said would be free and fair and would be held nearer than most people expect. The vote is due at the end of July in 2018, but there is talk it can be brought forward as early as March. I would have encouraged him to try and do a national unity government. He didn't choose that line, but he definitely needs, if he's going into an election, to have the economy firing on more cylinders. African cities, time for urgent reform. Over the next 20 years, the total number of city dwellers across Africa will increase from around 400 million to more than 1.26 billion, according to UN Habitat. Lagos, for example, has surged from 5 million inhabitants in 1980 to around 20 million today, making it already one of the world's top 10 megacities. According to Somik Lal, African cities share 3 features that frustrate their development. They are crowded but not economically dense. Asian cities have ploughed double the rate of investment into roads, sewerage, policing, healthcare than African countries have achieved over the past 4 decades. African cities are also disconnected. They are collectors of small, fragmented neighborhoods poorly served by unreliable transportation. And they're also costly. Suicide bomber killed at least 13 in a police academy attack in the Somali capital of Mogadishu. The US has announced it's no longer going to support the Somali army because of corruption, which just makes an interesting quandary. This is the quarterly bulletin from the South African Reserve Bank. Have a look at agriculture, which really outperformed and confirms its centrality in any African country's economy, particularly for economic diffusion. What is certain, therefore, is that the ruling party's conference will be a binary moment for South Africa's political and economic future. Colin Coleman of Goldman Sachs. Binary is the word. Implicated, conflicted, unreasonable, reckless, and with flagrant disregard for its constitutional duties. That is how the High Court describes the president, South African president. South African all shares up 14.2% year to date, to come off its all-time highs after the Steinhoff woes. Dollar rand around the 13.50 level. I expect a big rally to 12.60 if Ramaphosa makes it. My piece over the weekend was about Christo, Wiese, a man with the supposed Midas touch. We've now learnt that he has quit the supervisory board after this scandal. Stanley Druckenmiller, whom I admire immensely and who took $1 billion off the Bank of England, has also made a lot of money. He was short Steinhoff. The ECB is keeping zombie companies like Steinhoff alive. Half the street knew, says he. Nigerian all share up 41.15% so far this year. Ghana Stock Exchange up 49.99% so far this year. This is lovely, a little jewel of a game reserve that lies on South Africa's northwestern border, right up against Botswana. It's called Shwalu Kalahari Reserve. When most people think of a safari, they think of Africa's vast savannas, of Kenya's Masai Mara, of South Africa's bushveld. Far fewer know of a little jewel of a game reserve that lies on South Africa's northwestern border, right up against Botswana. Really looks tremendous. Interesting article about sugar smuggling in the Horn of Africa, sweet secrets in the Horn of Africa. Take a look. It's a new DIIS working paper entitled Sweet Secrets, Sugar Smuggling and State Formation in the Kenya-Somalia Borderlands. Quite a few Kenyan folks caught up in that article. More Africans have electricity, but they're using less of it. This is The Economist. Tourists have long been drawn to Hell's Gate National Park in Kenya by its steep cliffs, plentiful zebras, and spectacular canyons. Recently, there is a new attraction, a spa set amid the cliffs, with a huge pool heated by the energy stored in the Earth's crust. Curiously, it is not run by a tourist company, but by KenGen, the national electricity generator. It abuts the Olkaria geothermal power plants, for which plumes of steam pour into the sky. Since 1982, 4 power stations have opened there. A 5th is being built, and work on a 6th will begin soon. Energy harvested from volcanic heat now provides almost half the power Kenya needs. Electrification has been one of the country's great successes over the past decades. It is not just new generators, the number of people connected to the power network has also soared. According to the Kenya Power Lighting Company, nearly 3/4 of Kenyans are now connected, up from barely a quarter in 2013. Trend in many African countries has been in the same direction. According to the World Bank, the proportion of Africans with access to electricity increased from 19% in 1991 to 37% in 2014. Yet this achievement is not quite as impressive as it may sound. More people than ever may be connected to the electricity, but they're not using it much. In 2014, each African consumed on average just 483 kilowatt hours. That is less than in the 1980s. Americans, by comparison, used almost 13,000 kilowatt hours each. In Kenya, electricity use per person rose by just 10% between 2010 and 2014, even as the number of people connected more than doubled. The weakness of demand is on the face of it somewhat puzzling. Sub-Saharan Africa, with 1 billion people, generates less electricity than South Korea. Nigeria, the region's most populous country, produces less than half as much as Romania, despite having almost 10 times more people. This has long been assumed to be because of weak supply. All over Africa, rich residents of big cities keep generators fueled with diesel, and large firms build their own power stations alongside new factories. A lack of electricity is widely thought to be one of the main obstacles to economic growth. Yet producing more power does little if people are unwilling or unable to pay for it. Earlier this year, officials at KPLC said that almost 1 million customers who are connected to the grid have bought no power at all. That's an interesting conundrum. Worldwide, power consumption is strongly correlated to GDP, but in Africa, most countries use less power than their incomes would predict. This is largely because Africa has so little manufacturing and heavy industry. If electrification programs continue to focus on rural areas, utilities may be too cash-strapped to maintain the grid where it really matters, in cities and industrial regions where investors are building factories. Without industrialization and good jobs, few Africans will be able to afford much more electricity. That is real powerlessness. Earlier today, with the Ghanaian President John Dramani Mahama and CS Najib Balala at the Likoni Ferry Crossing, Uhuru Kenyatta tweeted it was good to speak to His Excellency John Mahama late last night. Today has been a happy day to see the smiles on the faces of our staff and customers as we restock our shelves. That's Andrew Dixon at Uchumi. If you're interested in the share price data, the link is there as well. That news encouraged an 8.571% rebound yesterday in the share price. Uchumi targets 3 billion shilling land sale to boost its comeback. They've also got a bit of land, which have a few problems, but it seems they've now established full ownership rights, and that will lock in a good deal of cash. Nairobi All Share is up 29.65% year to date, 2-day correction since hitting a 35-month high. Going back to KenGen, the beauty of clean emissions from the Olkaria 2 geothermal power plant backlit with the morning sun. Photographed by B. Possox. NSE 20 is up 16.33% year to date. I therefore wish you a super weekend and thank you kindly. If you've listened this far, you are dedicated and